Welcome to Condom Distribution as a Structural Intervention, Midwest Virtual Institute, brought to you by AIDS United as a part of the CVA Provider Network, supported by Cooperative Agreement number PS 19-1904 from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Carson, for that awesome overview. I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Teresa Bedzighi. I am a CEBA capacity building coordinator on the AIDS United team. And today I will be talking to you about condom economics. So everyone in this room is involved in condom distribution in some way, shape, or form. And regardless of your position, condom economics plays a role in who, what, where, and how you do your job. We're all in the business of public health, and it costs money to be in this business. Sometimes you have to have a lot of money or a high level of funding, but most times funding is small, and yet you're still expected to produce big outcomes. I'm sure so many of us can relate to that. While we usually use terms that are based in public health, in this module, we will be introducing some financial and business related terms, such as procurement, supply and demand, and return on investment, among others. These concepts, be able to strategically develop and strengthen your condom. This presentation will help you about allocating your resources and how to distribute your product to maximize distribution. Next slide, please. Awesome. So by the end of this session, folks will be able to understand the dynamics of condom procurement. It's the same type of procurement as any other type of procurement, but it's a word that we don't often use in public health. So we wanted to introduce that and increase the level of comfortability for that word in this session. Additionally, it will help you understand how to facilitate the procurement of condoms for your program or your agency. Using strategies that work best for you and that are tailored to your needs. And lastly, it'll help you think critically about how you can achieve the biggest return on your investment. Next slide, please. So to get us started, we will go ahead and kick off and move through Mural. And that will pop up in just one second. And it's also on page 8 of the workbook if folks have a physical copy of it. And it's also available for download through, I believe it's popped the Mural link into the chat box so folks can access that. And you will be asked to enter your name and your email. Awesome. Just going to give folks a second to pop in and we can go ahead and get started. So while we do so, while we will spend the rest of the session digging deeper into the different components of condom economics, I first wanted to demonstrate the role that everyone has at a condom distribution program and how that plays into the cycle and the economics of this work. So as you see, the Mural is set up to have different life cycles of the condom: production, procurement, preparation, promotion, delivery, and evaluation. If folks can go ahead and in each part of the life cycle, pick like a little emoji and put it onto the sticker that they feel that applies to them. So go ahead and put an icon or a stamp on next to each of the steps. Additionally, once you do that, go ahead and add your role and any other ways that you see your involvement. We're going to go ahead and give folks just a few more minutes. I see so many people in there. It's lovely. get to go to each step, production, procurement, and really think about what is your role in that step at your agency or your organization, and what is the best way in which you see your involvement. The Mural link for folks is in the Zoom chat box, just for your convenience. And I'm watching the chat. You can drag and drop the stickers from the little like sticker bank that's next to each like post-it on Mural. Okay, just a couple more minutes. If folks have any more questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and I will do my best to answer. I would say maybe folks can try zooming in really quickly just to see if that can help the changing of the page issue. And again, the Mural link is in the Zoom chat box. Awesome. Well, so one of the things that was the most important part of this activity was to go ahead and see how everyone, no matter the organization, is involved in the life of a condom, and also the procurement process, the production process, the preparation and site distribution. We all have a role to play in condom economics. And I hope that this was the beginning of being able to open folks' minds and eyes to what role they play and how best they can implement the condom distribution in their organizations. And also, if folks are not able to, you can just go ahead and pop your answer into the chat, and we will love to go ahead and catch up with that. We will go ahead and move on though to CDSI planning. So here they are again, the 3 A's that by the end of this institute, you will be absolutely tired of hearing from us. That is availability, accessibility, and acceptability, right? So the 3 A's are part of building and strengthening your condom distribution program, and to think critically about which of the 3 A's that you need to strengthen. So if you have a warehouse full of condoms that you can deliver to your community, you don't want to spend your resources on availability. Rather, you would want to focus on making the condoms in the warehouse accessible to your community. Additionally, you need to remember to be realistic. We may not all have the budget to work on all the 3 A's at the same time, which is totally understandable and fully expected, especially given the realities of the pandemic. When you look back at your implementation plan, you will likely see that you're already doing at least one of the 3 A's. And if that is the case, you will need to prioritize which of the 3 A's you want to focus on based on the roadmap you have created when you developed your implementation plan and you completed your community assessment. Continuously referring to and basing many of your decisions off the 3 A's when thinking about allocating your resources will help ensure that you are most likely and strategically using your resources. Next slide, please. We will spend the next few slides learning about the history of the New York Condom Availability Program with a specific lens to how the program looks differently today in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. There will absolutely be an opportunity to learn about a Midwest case right after this session. We're just using the NYCAP program as a context and as an antidote. So as we get started, we want to recognize the roots of the New York Condom Availability Program stem back decades. This program was incredibly successful, and we hope that it provides great insight where your programs can grow and how to dream bigger and better tactics for your implementation. Next slide, please. So this is the foundation of NYCAP. This was from the strategic plan in 2006 when the decision was made to have a municipally branded condom. All right, so the first step was to make condoms widely available for free. Additionally, the next step was increase access to condoms for new HIV/AIDS service organizations. Additionally, increase availability of condoms for clients and communities, and increase condom use in New York City. Just relating back to how Carson had mentioned, really hitting all three of those levels, right? Availability being individual, accessibility being organizational, accessibility being environmental and or community. A component that the original plan was social marketing. The health department had been giving out condoms since 1971, but they weren't necessarily popular or even accepted. And so the health department condoms were not necessarily highly sought after, and folks didn't necessarily want to use them. So the program allocated resources to creating a municipally branded condom in hopes of increasing acceptability. Next slide, please. So accessibility. So the health department had began distributing condoms in 1971. In the 1980s, they identified a need to have condoms available at HIV service organizations, right? So in early 2000, there was a clear need to make the condoms more widely accessible. And in 2005, the program put resources into building an online ordering system to make the condoms more accessible and a bit more discreet, because it just comes straight to wherever it is that you're located. At this point, the orders increased exponentially. With the introduction of the online ordering system, the program decided it was now time to shift gears. And in 2007, the program began focusing on their next A, acceptability. Perfect. And in 2007, on National Condom Awareness Day in February, NYCAP holds an event or makes an announcement in order to reinvigorate interest in their program and keep the conversation about safer sex alive. Building acceptability does not only require having the financial resources, but the staff resources as well, right? So the program needs staff who are available to promote the products and to help normalize the use of safer sex products in the communities being served. In some ways, especially with a small budget, the allocation of staff resources is more important and more impactful than a large-scale campaign. Next slide, please. By the end of 2019, had successfully allocated resources and built a robust program that was distributing 43.7 for sex products across 3,500 locations in all 5 boroughs. And also feel free to drop any questions and comments in the chat, and I'll be sure to go ahead and answer them. Next slide, please. So now that we've reviewed the overall impact of the program, we're going to dive deeper into some of the details about how NYCAP was able to successfully implement their condom distribution plan. We're going to spend the next couple of slides talking about the targeted allocations. Next slide. But first, a poll. So if folks can go ahead, we will go ahead and launch a poll. Just giving folks a little bit of time to go ahead and answer that poll, please. We just want to garner an idea of what ways folks in the room have made sure that their resources are reaching those who need them. So don't worry if you don't use all of the mechanisms, or even if you're unsure about what they all are. Just giving folks just one quick second. And if the poll results could pop up just so we can take a look. Awesome. So over half of you all are using all of the above, which is fantastic. I'm so happy to hear that. One of the things, so the number of condoms distributors, okay, that's interesting. Population serves and distribution targets. Awesome. Thank you. Next slide, please. So ideally, a program should look at all of this information to make that condoms are going where they're needed. For example, NYCAP is housed within the Bureau of HIV, right? So the target population, in extremely general terms, is those at highest risk of HIV infection. Priority areas in New York City include the DPHO neighborhoods, which are neighborhoods that carry the heaviest burden of disease and therefore focused on getting product to those individuals or communities. How then, though, can we know that the product is going where is needed? How do we just figure out who the communities are, where the communities are located, who is in those communities, how to reach those communities? And so one of the questions that we really implore folks to ask themselves is, how many condom distributors do I have? Is that enough, or do I need to expand? Do I have target numbers? Do I have real-time target numbers on the communities that I'm choosing or that I'm hoping to impact? And do I have to distribute 1 million condoms in a certain amount of time, or do I have a certain amount of dollars to spend on condoms? So again, looking at return on investment, are you looking to return most on money spent or time spent? And the level of opportunity cost as well. Next slide. So looking at this map, it's a map of HIV prevalence in New York City in 2015. The darker colors show the areas that carry the heaviest burden of HIV infections across the 5 boroughs. And condom distribution was in New York City was focused and targeted to those specific areas because those are the areas with the highest amount of burden. In a few moments, though, you will see a slide that shows how New York City targets their distribution and works to reach individuals in the areas that are most heavily impacted. As a note, incidence data is used only if a significant spike is identified. Therefore, incidence data will change while prevalence data stays more consistent and more constant. So I would suggest, and we would suggest, using prevalence data for long-term projections and planning. So looking at this map here, we see that many of the darker shaded parts of New York City match with the areas that had the highest burden. And that was where distribution was fully targeted. So here's an example illustrating the locations where contracts are funded to provide services in those particular areas. So looking at this quick table, it's just some numbers thrown in and some about the risk population. So 64.2 of NYCAP safer sex products to HIV positive and high risk negatives. And that is up, this is data from 2017, and that is up from 57% that was in 2016. So we see a significant increase, right? So the program uses EPI data to evaluate where the is, and they use the zip code data to evaluate and show that they are distributing there. And whether or not efforts need to be tweaked, if different strategies need to be implemented, if different plans need to be implemented, if different folks need to be out in the field, and if they're really connecting with the communities that they are, serving. NYCAP is a large organization with resources to figure this all out, but a smaller organization can do it in simpler ways. So later today, we'll be looking at a case study from Kansas City Department of Health, who will give us some more insight on how things play out in the Midwest. So what is supply and demand? Um, the slide is animated, so I would just keep clicking. But what is supply and demand? So you need to order as many condoms as you give out. So too much product will result in a surplus, which may be difficult to distribute. Condoms may expire or they may be compromised depending on how they're being stored and where they're being stored. Product causes a shortage, resulting in communities, venues, locations needing requiring the product that you said that you're going to supply. So balancing the scales between supply and demand is essential in order to stay within your budget and to get the most return on your investment. The DOE orders condoms every year for New York City. When the school year ends each year, the schools have leftover condoms. In the chat, please answer this. Why is that such a huge problem? That at the end of the school year, whatever condoms haven't been used are just like there. They're just left over, maybe to be carried over to the next year. But we all know that when schools close and summer's out, no one's really paying attention to the storage of these things. No one's really, no one's in the schoolhouse. So just giving folks just one quick second to reply in the chat. Yes, absolutely, they could expire. Proper temperature proper temperature storage, absolutely. Condoms need to be kept in a cool drum with no direct sunlight. The latex can do anything in the wrappers. It gets a bit tricky. Getting closer to the expiration dates, and yes, the latex may get dry and old. And if that's the product is compromised, so it makes no sense to push that product out into the community. And just one more wave. Absolutely, Devin. Waste is an issue overall. And if we're really talking about maximizing our return on investment and really trying to figure out the scale between supply and demand, we want to make sure that we reduce waste. Inherently, they just go in hand when choosing and trying to make the best business decisions for this type of transaction, which is the procurement of condoms and also fulfilling whatever the demand is. So when the schools close, thank you so much. And please go ahead and keep popping answers into the chat. When the schools close, conditioning in the building, guys, and the products become compromised. And in addition, the product has to be collected and properly destroyed, which takes time and money. And worse still, like Devin had pointed out, there is wasted product. So condom contractors must consider their monthly supplies necessary to meet contractual requirements and maintain distribution to their non-traditional site networks. So, and at the same time, they must avoid over distributing and wasting products. Contractors are in a somewhat unique situation because they don't have actual costs involved in purchasing condoms. However, their careful distribution affects the bottom line. In condom distribution, Pride season is always a busy time of year. So as a health department or a CBO, we need to order the proper amount of supply to get through the busy season while ensuring that is remaining to meet the demands throughout the rest of the year. I'm sure that folks every year during Pride, well, before COVID, every year during Pride, meeting the demand of supply of condoms, for all the parades and the parties and the club nights and everything, is a difficult and tricky dance, right? You want to make sure that you have the supply needed to meet that demand. And another aspect to think about is when you're considering your supply needs is that different condoms have different price points. So how many of us have been into clinics or college campuses or a pride parade, and there's certain condoms you feel comfortable with that you've used before, and then there's some that you might have heard don't work well or don't taste right or whatever, so you kind of leave those to the in the bowl and you get the good ones. That happens all the time. And so when you go ahead and ordering the condoms, you have to think about, well, what do folks want and what can I provide? And that happy medium is where condom distribution lives. Next slide, please. So NYCAP in the time of COVID-19. So we are all aware in a global pandemic at this time, right? So, and we all experience the complete shift and change in our day-to-day lives, in our jobs, in our business, and especially in the distribution of condoms. So traditionally, NYCAP relied solely on community distribution. When you think about the 3 A's, you see that New York State shut down orders during the COVID-19 pandemic and introduced challenges impacting the availability and the accessibility of NYCAP's free safer sex products. The same has been the case for many health departments in the Midwest, as well as our partner organizations and their distribution sites. So everyone across the board, whether it be a health department, whether it be a CBO, whether it be a site, has all felt the impact of COVID-19. For NYCAP, this is a new challenge. So their focus had to shift from acceptability and accessibility to availability. So this can happen and has happened to any of our programs, that as the canvas shifts, so does your budgeting and how you prioritize your resources and where you allocate them also shift. So with everything shut down or shutting down due to COVID-19, the program had a huge demand for the product because people were shut down and locked in and in quarantine with each other. Quarantine babies and such, but with no way to deliver it. So only a small portion of the 3,500 venues were confirmed to be open and available to distribute products so out of the 3,500, there were less than 20 that remained open. This change significantly limited, and if not, the community's access to free, safer sex products through traditional and non-traditional venue. Yet at the same time, of HIV, STIs, and unintended pregnancies remains for COVID-19, and the program needed to act. Next slide, please. In response to these challenges, NYCAP collaborated with One Condoms, the manufacturer of the New York City, and closely within the administration to allocate resources to change their contract, able to launch door-to-door, a condom delivery service. Into a contract that allows condoms to be shipped in quantities to 3 or more businesses. But what would an individual do with 3,000 safer sex products delivered to their home? When we talk about return on investment, when we talk about waste, when we talk about all those things, sending out 3,000 condoms to an individual, that's a lot of condoms. So every decision that was made with launch was based in economics. Work with their administrative team to change their procurement contract. They needed to shift monies from the current contract to door-to-door. So each envelope had 30 condoms. While the team decided number was, so the size you can put in 10 condoms can also hold in 30 condoms. So to get the most out of money spent, they went with putting in 30 condoms. Ideally, they wanted to have a mix of in each envelope. And that proved to be costly. The manufacturer was going to have to charge for additional staff to create order envelopes, as opposed to the supply of envelopes just be, again, looking at return on investment, looking at money order for something for the product to go out. As such, with a program as large as NYCAP, they didn't have a budget big enough for unlimited supplies, and they wanted to make sure that the supplies would last through the New York State pause orders. And so they limited orders to 2 envelopes per month, total of 6. Additionally, they relocated staff time so that they would have someone available to process the orders. The program was meant to be with all the shuffling and reallocating of sources. The process took months. and every step was a program. Next. This is also animated, yeah. So here are some common challenges faced by health departments. And I really wanted to make an difference and of challenges between health departments and community-based organizations. The slide really dictates it well because we have an audience full of a mix of folks from either health departments or community-based organizations. If folks can go ahead in the chat and just drop some challenges that they've experienced in work, that would be super helpful. An example of a supply challenge is when an item is drop shipped. So drop shipping is when a product is shipped directly from the vendor to the client, and there's no middleman. And meaning the product is not sent to the person or the entity that placed the order. I also want to note that while we have differentiated these challenges, sometimes the challenges faced between health departments and CBOs can be the same, such as funding or pricing, right? And the ordering program is strict, a bit more stringent, right? So there may be rules in effect which might not allow you to choose condoms that are part of it, as opposed to CBOs where the supervisors can order, you know, whatever condom is within their budget, whatever condom that they might want, whatever condom that they might think that would work well in the community. Stuff like storage, right? So a community-based organization might have a smaller space, a smaller unit. With COVID-19, they might have had to shut their doors because they're not considered an essential service. So what happens to condoms and product that are, you know, sitting in a place that might not be temperature controlled, as opposed to health departments? When you order 50,000 condoms, where do you put 50,000 condoms? And what happens during a pandemic? You know, where do you have a storage facility that's large enough for the condoms? Do you 100,000 condoms, 200, 500,000 condoms? And lastly, pricing. I see in the chat cost and pricing and stuff. Absolutely. So pricing for health departments, there might be purchase minimums and maximums that dictate the condom, the company, the type, be it latex or non-latex, be it ribbed or not ribbed, whatever the case may be. And for CBOs, might be where there's a commonality. There just might not be a lot of money. There just might be a shortage of funding. There just might be having to look elsewhere or outside of the CBO for additional funding for these condoms. So the more condoms that you purchase, the less expensive that they are per unit. But again, wanting to make sure, can a CBO order 100,000 condoms for a single month? Do they have that reach? Does that meet their demand, or is that less? So really figuring out the scales and the balances between both is extremely helpful. Next slide, please. This is also an animated slide. So what is included in a condom distribution budget? So in life, I just learned how to be a grown-up like 2 seconds ago, but in life, you have to budget everything, right? And in work, it's the same thing. And so the first thing is condoms. The next thing is lubricants, supplies, what type of dispensers, how are you going to package these condoms? Are they going to be shipped? Are they going to be given out into the community? Is it going to be part of an outreach effort? Who's going to do the work? Are you going to have to bring on volunteer part of your staff? Are you going to pay the volunteers? Do you have money? Transportation costs. Where is the site that you are? Is it close to the office? Is it close to the storage of the condoms? Do you need to get from the office to the storage facility to the site? All factoring in those transportation costs gets a little tricky, because then you can think about, as I'm, transporting product, how am I going to transport 1,000 condoms? condoms in a backpack, you try, but you might get like 1,000. How are we going to, transport the postage? If you are shipping something out, you have to pay for the postage. And USPS has the standard mail, and that's, great. But again, if you're posting a large volume of 30 condoms in an envelope, after about 1,000, it really starts adding up. So making sure that there's resources and funds allocated to the shipping and the postage. And lastly, promotional materials. How are you letting the community know you have condoms? How are you letting them for free? Where they can access them for free? Additionally, in light of the pandemic, how is your social media marketing going? That's something that resources are being allocated to fund and to facilitate. Are you on Instagram? Or are you on Facebook? Are you on Snapchat? Are you on any of the dating apps? Do folks know that there are free safer sex products available for their use? Next slide, please. So maximizing and leveraging gaps in your budget. So as we were talking about budget, there's different options with which make it work. So the first is pool programming. And it was first developed by the National Coalition. And they really developed in like this idea. So in the coalition, not everyone was able to afford condoms, like as organizations, individual entities, but they discovered that when we're able to pool their resources, they could increase their buying power, more condoms, and create a supply to meet the demand in their communities. And they were able to do so. And additionally, in buying more, they were able to also get a better price, because the more condoms you buy, the cheaper the price is per unit. Next is partnerships. So we talk a lot about leveraging partnerships, and what that really means in the different aspects and different. This particular example, a partnership is a mutually beneficial relationship between two. For example, there was the New York Department of Health and Mental Hygiene with LifeBeat, the music industry's sexual wellness arm for Global Female Con 2015. So the department had the supply, and LifeBeat had the outreach and the pull, if you will. And in partnering together on such an important day, they were their partnership and increase the awareness, increase the fact that free safer sex products did exist and community members, and also if you will, visibility for both the health department and for LifeBeat, the publicity, the social media, and all that stuff. So a mutually relationship between two entities. Donations, nothing wrong with asking for help from the community, right? And asking for help to help fund some of the. However, there's also especially nothing wrong with donors throughout the community. That is what the Flowers Heritage Foundation did. So their foundation, the mission of their foundation is to identify healthcare services, health disparities with solutions. To this end, the foundation has a goal of donating 1 million condoms every year to other like-minded nonprofit organizations. Past donations include 200,000 condoms to the Florida Health Department. The Florida Department of Health, 100,000 condoms to AIDS Foundation and Stop AIDS Project, 100,000 condoms to the Washington of Health, HIV, AIDS Administration, and 100,000 condoms to the Center for Community Ministry in San Juan, Puerto Rico. So in looking at donating those condoms to entities such as the Flowers Heritage Community Foundation. And lastly, requests from health departments. So this is probably the most straightforward way to leverage gaps in your budget. Most health departments do this regularly and is likely how some of your condoms place a request or an order with your local health department. Additionally, there are also larger donations at times of needs, such as when the New York Health Department donated 1 million condoms to Puerto Rico for its Zika response. Next slide, please. Awesome. If they can go ahead and turn to or log into work, there is a activity love for us to complete together. So hopefully this module helped you to your plan of action. And you can start formulating your ideas on how you will be able to achieve your biggest return on your investment. So there are 3 questions in this activity. The first question is, what additional information do you need to know about your own condom distribution plan? Second, availability, accessibility, and ability requires the most investment in your jurisdiction. And lastly, what challenges do you anticipate in building or adapt budget and other financial aspects of your condom distribution plan? So folks can go ahead and either pop that into the chat or go ahead and if you haven't had a chance to download the workbook, a link was just posted in the chat for folks to look through, download our questions. And we will give folks just a couple of minutes to brainstorm and to plop down some ideas. And again, just for if folks have just come in, the link for the workbook for the CDSI lovely workbook is available in the chat. And feel free to plop in any additional comments, questions, anything in the chat so that we can answer them while folks are just taking a second to brainstorm and answering the questions. Thank you so much, Tiffany, for your feedback. Absolutely additional info regarding budget and policies about what is allowed and what can work. That's super helpful. Yes, buy-in, increasing buy-in within the organization and outside the organization to make sure that these things are even possible. Absolutely. We're just going to give folks just a couple more minutes and feel free to go continue and add stuff into the chat. One of the things that I was thinking about in terms of challenges that folks might anticipate is the reality that, again, we are in a pandemic. So figuring out alternative ways to get this product out, to get people to know that it is available. How do you increase accessibility when we're being told that the best thing to do is to stay far away from each other? But we also have to continue to stay safe in the, in our social distanced, new realities. So that's definitely one thing to consider and really bring into your thought process moving forward for the foreseeable future of how to set up a program, a condom distribution program in a pandemic, and doing so safely so that you protect both your staff, the folks that you work with, and also your clients and your community, and reducing transmission of everything. Awesome. Well, if folks have any more they want to add, please put it in the chat, and we will circle back to that at the end. So we're getting near the end of our time. As a brief overview, condom economics is a vital consideration throughout the entire process of planning and implementing your condom distribution plan. To ensure that resources are getting to priority communities, we quickly about our financial investment into each of the 3 A's: acceptability, accessibility, availability, accessibility, and acceptability. And in addition, we have to think about the ways in which it creates avenues for flexibility and adaptation when needed. Again, remembering the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic, but this work can still be done. It's just a matter of being innovative, being flexible, and being able to maneuver the differences and the changes with as much patience as we can, and also giving ourselves grace and ensuring the fact that we're doing the absolute best that we can at the absolute best. And so just looking at the chat, Sheila mentioned something such as packaging as a challenge. So oftentimes we don't realize how challenging or how expensive packaging is, and how to get it out in a way that is cost effective and time effective. So thank you so much, Sheila, for bringing that up. I really appreciate that.